You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Radio Free Larry.
All right, here we go again. We're in the middle of that evil, demonic, criminal resurrection being engaged in by members of both parties. However, it is mainly entrenched within the Democratic Party. However, there are Republicans that are part of it, and we see a large number of those within the federal, state, and local governments. Some of them even support the president. However, given that moment, they are deep state, demonic individuals. They are not somebody that has ever been a team player or will ever be a team player unless it serves that demonic individual purpose. So again, there's a lot of deception out there. A multitude of deception and a multitude of deceptive people that have found their way into government service as well as into government office. And no, it's not the same as it was before. It's much different today, much worse. And it's getting worse. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. So take their thoughts out of your head. Take those deep state demonic thoughts out of your head that something's going to get better soon and throw it away. It's the only way that you can fight this battle against the beast. The deep state is Satan. It's a synonymous term. It is also the beast. The beast and Satan are seen as synonymous. The deep state also is synonymous with Satan. Again, greater works shall we do. Greater works shall we do. All right, this idea that the president was speaking to an ambassador, this person and that person, there was this investigation. That's the process. There is nothing wrong with investigating. I've said that all along. I said I didn't have a problem with them investigating me, but of course, there's limitations on what is to be done in the beginning, what they're allowed to do to get into a person's life, what they're allowed to do while they're in that life, and then there's a time to get out of that life and a way to get out of that life. So again, there are regulations and rules that govern those investigations. President Trump and the Department of Justice are well within those confines when we speak about the investigation of the Bidens, which is where the impeachment hearings seem to be today. Drinking some of my tea there. So we are looking at a scam, a con trick. This phone call happened, and President Trump said he loves your derriere. Or no, the other guy said he loves your derriere. It's nothing. It's like I said, they're looking for something salacious, but it's not even salacious. So there's nothing can happen off of it. It's so ludicrous. It's not even. It's never really funny these days with the deep state. So again, I said the investigations of President Trump were legitimate, but at a certain point, they had to pull out and they couldn't go any further. And there are statements within the text that say, hey, this isn't going to go anywhere. We haven't found anything. So again, there was a point where they decided they would become or they would engage in illegal activity during an investigation. However, I was going to say become criminals, but that doesn't fit. They were already criminals. Some delicious tea. They have probiotic tea nowadays. That's very interesting. So it's legitimate to investigate. And this is what this whole scandal is about, that an investigation took place of who? Of a Democrat that happened to be running for office. But that's not anything to do with why the investigation occurred. The president said, hey, I'm going to investigate these people, and wherever it leads, it's going to lead. And all of that Mueller stuff includes a lot of Ukraine. And I explained this to you before. Back when, in the 90s, when I was in the government, and I can only tell you so much, that topic came up during some interviews. So I have a lot of information about something going on in the 90s. The person that told us wasn't credible, so we don't take what he says at face value, but his topic was credible. He had information, and that may have been why they really put the stones to him. He had a lot of information about Ukrainian issues in the 90s. So again, we're still there. Everybody's trying to get a piece of the rock there. I don't think the president really has much concern about that part of it, the payoff part of it. I mean, he sees interest, business interests, national interest, and when I say business interest, U.S. business interest in dealing with Ukraine, which means everything he's been doing all along, trying to make deals with China, trying to make deals with Russia, trying to make deals with Ireland, trying to make deals with the UK, trying to make deals with Korea. So it's government business. So that's what we see. What they're trying to say is there's something else going on, because why? It's psychological projection, and it's worked for them until now. You can't even shame them from psychologically projecting a scam. You can't, because they know it worked for them. And it's satanic. It works for them. Satan works on this planet. This is not God's world. No matter how much money you have or how big your church is, this is not God's world. So in reality, if Jesus were here, Jesus would say, okay, you got a big church. This is not God's world, but you have a mansion here. And you worship in a mansion, maybe laudable, maybe not. So again, that's what's going on in the end times. There's a lot of ideology about success and who these people are that are in the church as far as being better than everyone else, and that's not true. And we realize that we have a lot of scandal in the church. And I've told you for years, the church is listening to the FBI, and they're operating these sexualizing operations, maybe not knowing what they're doing, maybe some of them knowing what they're doing. CIA activity within churches against U.S. citizens. And when somebody comes in, honestly, they're supposed to be allowed to worship. They're not supposed to be targeted by criminals in government through the church. So again, that's some of what's going on there. So the church has to be very careful in how it accepts these things from the deep state. It has to be very careful on how it accepts this type of activity within really what I find to be a medical environment. Of course, it's protected by freedom of religion and separation of church and state, which does not exist when you're operating CIA and FBI psychological warfare operations within your church. But I find it to be a medicinal environment, which means people go to church to heal. You've sold that to Satan, church. And it's not just one church. It's not just one preacher. But as I've told you for years, that you're operating this stuff for them, but within your church, these preachers have sexually offended. And the FBI comes in and extorts them through what they've done wrong to do what it is they want them to do, and it's these sexualization operations, these radicalization operations. So again, these things, and it does include fabricated statements, false statements, bearing false witness. It does include that. Now, they believe that there's a higher calling to bear a false witness. You see, Comey knows what he's talking about because he knows what he put in everybody's head. He knows what the deep state put in the preacher's head. There's a higher calling to bear false witness. Believe you me, that's what they believe. This is a end times religion that has been developed in every denomination. I don't speak denomination at all. The Bible does not speak denomination. I don't speak denomination. I'm just telling you that. Baptist really means nothing to me, but for a fact that I was in the Baptist church for a period of time. But it really means nothing to me. It's not God. It's not Jesus. It's not your original form. It's a earthbound designation. And within the Baptist church, we find fallenness and people are shocked. Well, I think we're on the same planet in the Baptist church as we are outside the Baptist church. So again, I neither condemn you for that, but I neither accept your, I guess, is this a word, incredulity over the fact that it exists within your church, or your shock that it exists within your church. For some reason, you believe within your church is different than outside your church. In fact, it might be, but it might be better outside your church. And I've brought this up before, because if you are operating for the deep state in your church, the people are dead meat in your church. They'll sin 10 times as much in your church, or after they leave your church, than they did before they got to your church, because you'll possess them and curse them to it. Because you'll possess them and curse them to it. Because you'll possess them and curse them to it. That's what the FBI and the CIA does when they operate psychologically. When they operate psychologically, they are possessing people to crime, immorality, and sin. They are the stumbling block that causes people to fall. You all are looking at physical things while moving spiritual and psychological things to cause people to fall. And then you're pointing at it to tell everybody that's what's going on. Again, I'm going to bring this up because I know they're heavy listening and heavy breathing in their minds as to what I'm saying. I've committed no crimes. Have I sinned? I've told you all along I sinned. The Bible tells me I sinned. But God tells me I didn't sin. God said, you've never sinned in your life. You have not yet lived your life. You have no power to live your life. You've given all your power over to me. And you're working for me. And that's all it's been the whole life. You have not lived your life. And if you've ever stumbled, it's the people that I've instructed you in, which is the people that I am speaking about. And the deep state is not only government, it's private sector and others. So again, there is a communist party operating within the United States that involves both Republicans and Democrats. The scam is to play one side against the other. So now that the conservative is in office, the conservative communists take the lead. But again, the Democrat communists are fighting also. Again, you're watching two communist entities fight. Although President Trump is most likely not a communist, he's just not surrounded by people that teach him how to take out the communists. I've been telling him all along, I said, don't believe Pelosi. Don't believe Pelosi. Don't give her anything. Don't believe her. You believed her. And I said a lot of other things, including don't hire Rosenstein. He's too close to Mueller. That tea sure is good. So President Trump is not anywhere he shouldn't be as a president. He's one of the first people that is actually managing the executive branch. They're trying to act like, the president just sits up there and signs things. No, he's just a signature. He just signs things. He's just a figurehead. That's what they're trying to make the president. Why? Because the directors are trying to form a Politburo. Comey and Brennan, Clapper, and all those people attempted to form a Politburo where the president is nothing more than their lackey. And that happened in the Obama administration a little bit. Obama, I think, stood up for himself in the end because once you learn everybody's corruption, they no longer can extort you the way they could before because now you have their corruption in your mind, in your present mind. Again, they were a little afraid of him because he knew everything. And again, I want to bring this up again, and again. Cancel culture is a psychological warfare operation, the term itself, to cover over the fact that they're murdering people from CIA, from FBI, from federal, state, and local agencies. It's not something that just popped up in our culture. It was created by criminals in government using trillion-dollar CIA technology, KGB technology, Chinese secret police technology, so on and so forth. Why do I say that? Because people in our CIA know exactly what they're doing in Russia to harm people, know exactly what they're doing in China to harm people, whatever is going on around the globe. NSA and CIA studies it, and they are using it now for their criminal gain. Their criminal gain. That criminal gain includes treason, sedition, and espionage. They have engaged in espionage against U.S. employees of the federal government. They have engaged in espionage using CIA techniques and methods, either instructed overtly, covertly, or with a shadow methods. They have used those techniques and methods to espionage U.S. operation, and they're doing that also with the impeachment hearings. It's a form of espionage. Mueller's investigation was a form of espionage. Again, nothing wrong with initial activity. But when you find there's a reason to get out, then you get out. And you don't leave time bombs to sabotage a person's life, like 50 civilians that have information that you gave them to do something later. Again, we're seeing deep state activity increasing against myself and the other U.S. citizens while President Trump is being encumbered with these impeachment hearings. That's why it's very, very important, very, very important that when you get a lull, that you look after us citizens, because when they attack you again, you're going to be preoccupied. So they tell you a bunch of stuff while you're no longer preoccupied. Like, don't worry about it. We got your back. Pelosi's making deals. Everything's okay. And so you didn't think that you needed to actually support your supporters a little bit more. Now you need your supporters. And your supporters are still here, and they never left, but went through hell trying to stay here, but for the Hollywood types that you see out there living the royal life. And I'm laughing because God's showing us down here as to what kind of lives the people that support you are living when the deep state accepts them as an acceptable loss. Again, without the unacceptable loss, people such as myself, Robin Gritz, Danielle Marks, you'd have been nowhere, because they don't have information to take them down spiritually. Earth revolves around what people say and think. If we don't say and think, then you got nothing against the deep state. Then you got nothing against the deep state. So we're out here, and it's not only those three people. There's probably thousands of us, and we're out here speaking down the deep state. Knowledge of murders, knowledge of narcotics use, knowledge of sexuality that they try to claim other people are into, that they're most likely into, or they've looked the other way for some sort of crony, such as Epstein. Epstein is just one of probably tens of thousands of people that the government recruited using that type of method. Epstein worked for the government. He was an extortionist for CIA type people, whether it's official or unofficial is neither here nor there. When I speak of CIA and FBI, I'm speaking of the entire deep state connections that they have. So again, the president hasn't done anything. He's engaged or anything wrong. He's done something. He's investigated corruption. I think they all jumped the gun. It wasn't as if President Trump was going to arrest Biden tomorrow with, the bar and all of the people that work for him. The number one law enforcement officer in this country is actually the president. I don't know if you realize that. The number one law enforcement officer in this country is the U.S. president. It's in the Constitution. He has a responsibility. It doesn't trickle up, it trickles down. They have no power without the executive. They have no power without the executive. It's a scam that communists used to say that the president has no power, that the power exists within the director, who nobody can fire because the Politburo is supreme. Politburo being the Soviet Union organization that actually ran the entire country and would say who gets what and who doesn't get what. And that's what CIA, FBI, U.S. Marshal Service, immigration, they're everywhere. Just because we love ICE doesn't mean we love ICE deep state. You understand that they exist outside of the director's office? Do we understand that? Until you begin to move on what I'm saying, you're not going to get anywhere because they're all going to just keep creeping up. So again, the president hasn't done anything wrong. He's investigating. He's doing a great job. Barr is investigating along with the president, hopefully trying to, or hopefully figuring out how the deep state is connecting across the globe, and we can kind of bring them back, because the deep state that we're speaking about there is the federal government. And we have a requirement to make sure the federal government isn't working for individual auspices, that it becomes this cohesive unit. They have no reason to go to another entity and attempt to get wealthy off of that entity, because they either are a public servant, or they're going to leave the government, or they're going to be a criminal. So it's one of those three things, because today you're not a criminal if you're a criminal FBI deep state, or you're somebody who's actually made the grade and everybody else is stupid because they don't do what you do. Well, that's it in a nutshell. And the president has done nothing wrong. They keep trying to make something out of this investigation. The investigation that President Trump and the Department of Justice is engaged in is something that we knew would occur and needed to occur. So first off, they don't want a Democrat investigated. Second off, they don't want a deep state person investigated. Because why? Because then Schiff gets investigated. Because then Pelosi gets investigated. So again, that's what they're trying to fight. And there's obviously crime. And as I've told you, it includes death of people, murder in the first degree. Therefore, they have everything to fight for, they believe. I mean, I think the president would have moved forward. And I said that in the beginning. I said, if you all just calm down and work with the president when he first took office, when I realized that he was real, he'll move forward of all this squabbling that's going on. He won't look to this or look to that, but they made it bigger than life. They presented before, even before the president took office, a image of a government that was criminal, not just corrupt. Even though corruption is criminal, when you say corrupt, it doesn't have the same impact as criminal. But again, he took office. He was willing to move forward. You all didn't do it. So you presented a much worse image, of a very criminal and evil thing that has taken over the United States government in a hostile manner. And it includes racketeering, extortion, bribery, quid quo pro, like it doesn't exist in Schiff's life, right? It doesn't exist in Bernie's life, right? But the president was willing to say, hey, let's all start with a clean slate. There's no problem if you get rich in government, as long as you don't go too far. That's generally how all governments operate, even in the most honest time periods. However, you all didn't listen. I told you, you can get rich, but don't harm people getting there. And you just continued to harm people. And just because I happen to be one of the people you harm doesn't mean I have no right to speak on it. And again, I agreed that you had a right to investigate anybody in the world for a short period of time, as long as you had that right to investigate them, which means, did you have that right? But yet, if you found something, I said, okay, investigate me. But you don't have a right to do what you did to my life. Bring CIA in there since the early or mid-90s, at least. I don't know. But I know that they were there. I understand now what was happening all those years and who all these people were. They were deep state, and the CIA was running it. But for all I know, you were there in my military career also, because the end of my military career didn't go the way my military career should have went. But yet I still was there as one of the best of the best. I was top 5% of the sappers in the government when I was there. There's no doubt. I was Special Forces material, no doubt. But I had a family, and the Special Forces people said, this isn't a place you want to be. they're not respecting us, I would just move on. So I moved on, as I've done many times in my life, by the grace of God. Well, praise God in all that you do. Praise God.
You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.